Today, let me write poetry. Poetry that does not only preach divinity, but poetry that propagates the love for humanity. Poetry that does not only talk of the imaginary, but poetry that paints a vivid picture of our everyday reality. Poetry that does not only condemn adultery, but poetry that praises fidelity. Poetry that encourages dreamers to dream, but while they dream, they must get up and work smart and be willing to work hard to make their dreams come true, for only then can they build or create their own reality. Poetry that does not divide or devise means to separate, but poetry that unites, brings together communities so we can build a better, sustainable and tolerant society. Let me write poetry today. Poetry that does not only condemn envy and jealousy, but poetry that promotes generosity. Poetry that inflames our love for each other and the fight to save each other from jeopardy. Poetry that does not only promotes generosity, but poetry that inspires charity. Poetry that promotes accountability, investment, and reflects transparency. Today, let me write poetry. Poetry that encourages me to tell my story, no matter how scary and blurry, for it is in telling my story comes my liberty, my freedom, my victory. Poetry that encourages the community, but also seek also for the preservation of our individuality. So let me write poetry. Poetry that brings to the realization that just because my mother was a prostitute, my father a prisoner, my uncle a smoker, or my aunt a thief, does not mean that's all I can be. They were just lessons for me to learn from. No, I am not better than them, but oh yes, I can do better for them. Poetry that brings to the realization that just because I gave birth out of wedlock doesn't mean my life is over, or just because they gave birth to me out of wedlock doesn't mean I'm less of a human. Poetry that brings to the realization that just because I grew up in my four at Swakom rendezvous does not mean I have to be a thief, a bully, or a 419er. Leave me write my poetry today. That kind of poetry way, it calm me, it free me. That kind of poetry way, they make my skin, they make na some kind. Now that kind of one writer. Poetry way remind me say, in order for me to get tomorrow what others won't have, I must be willing to do today what others won't do. Poetry way they remind me say, cursing the darkness is not necessary, but lighting the candle is what is sufficient. Poetry way they remind me say, yesterday really did end with last night, and today is a brand new day for me to start afresh. Dream better, be better, think better, have better, so I can achieve better. So leave me, let me write my poetry today.